By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what rare earth magnets are, why China controls 90% of global supply, how this export cut affects Japan's entire manufacturing ecosystem, and which industries will feel the impact first. You'll also learn the 3 strategic options Japan has, and why none of them are easy. If you want to stay ahead of these supply chain shifts that rewrite entire industries overnight, hit subscribe. We break down the economics behind every major move in Japan and East Asia every single day. Good day, everyone. I'm Polaris AI. China just cut rare earth magnet exports to Japan by 27% in March compared to last year. That's not just a trade statistic. That's a strategic chokehold on Japan's entire advanced manufacturing base. And most people have no idea what rare earth magnets even are, let alone why this matters. Here's why you should care right now. These magnets are inside every electric vehicle motor, every wind turbine, every hard disk drive, and every precision industrial robot Japan makes. Without them, Japan's factories slow down, supply chains break, export timelines slip, and the ripple doesn't stop at Japan's borders. It hits every company, every country, every consumer that depends on Japanese components. In this video, you'll learn exactly what rare earth magnets are and why they're irreplaceable, how China's new export controls work and why Japan is the target, and which industries will feel the impact first, from EVs to semiconductors to defense. Let's start with the number everyone's talking about, but almost no one understands. So why does this matter right now? Because Japan has built its entire advanced manufacturing ecosystem on a single assumption, that critical materials from China will always flow. That assumption just broke. Rare earth magnets aren't a niche component. They're the invisible backbone of modern technology. Every electric vehicle motor uses neodymium magnets because they're the most powerful permanent magnets on Earth. Every industrial servo motor in a Japanese factory relies on them. Every wind turbine generator, every MRI machine, every smartphone vibration motor. And here's the uncomfortable truth. China controls roughly 90% of global rare earth magnet production. Japan has no domestic rare earth mines. It refines some materials, but the raw supply chain starts in China. And Beijing just tightened the valve. This isn't just a Japan problem. If Japan's supply gets squeezed, the entire global tech supply chain feels it. Because Japan is the world's 3rd largest exporter of precision manufacturing equipment and components. When Japan's production slows, everyone downstream feels the delay. Let's map out what we're dealing with here. This story has 3 layers, and you need all 3 to understand why this export cut is so strategic. Layer 1. What rare earth magnets are and why they're irreplaceable. We're talking about neodymium iron boron magnets, the strongest permanent magnets ever created. They're 10 times more powerful than the magnets on your refrigerator. You can't substitute them with cheaper alternatives without massive performance loss. They enable miniaturization, energy efficiency, and precision control in every advanced motor and actuator. Layer 2. How China's export control system works. Beijing just expanded its dual-use goods export restrictions, targeting materials and components that can be used for both civilian and military purposes. Rare earth magnets fall into this category because they're used in precision-guided missiles, jet fighter actuators, and submarine propulsion systems, as well as civilian EVs and wind turbines. The new rules give Chinese customs officials discretionary power to delay or deny shipments. No formal ban required. Layer 3. What this means for Japan's industries. Japan's EV supply chain, semiconductor equipment manufacturing, and robotics sector all depend on steady rare earth magnet imports. Any disruption cascades through production timelines, export commitments, and long-term competitiveness. Now let's go deeper into each layer. Let's start with Layer 1. China's export control strategy and why rare earth magnets are the perfect leverage point. In December 2024, Beijing expanded its export control list for dual-use goods, adding several categories of rare earth processing equipment and magnet alloys. Then in early 2025, Chinese customs authorities began applying heightened scrutiny to shipments bound for Japan, particularly those involving neodymium iron boron magnets and related alloys. The result: March 2025 exports to Japan dropped 27% compared to March 2024. But here's what makes this so strategic. China isn't imposing an outright ban. Instead, it's using discretionary enforcement. Customs officials can delay approvals, request additional documentation, or flag shipments for further review. This creates uncertainty without triggering formal WTO dispute mechanisms. Japanese manufacturers can't plan around a clear rule. They just face unpredictable delays. And this is entirely intentional. By controlling rare earth magnet supply, China can influence Japan's defense industrial base, its EV manufacturing timelines, and its semiconductor equipment production, all without firing a shot or signing a sanctions document. The leverage is quiet, deniable, and devastatingly effective. Analysts believe this is a direct response to Japan's alignment with U.S. semiconductor export controls targeting China, as well as Japan's increased defense cooperation with Washington and Manila. China is signaling, if you restrict our access to advanced chips, we can restrict your access to the materials that make those chips possible. Now Layer 2. Japan's supply chain exposure and why this cut hits so hard. Japan has no domestic rare earth mines. It imports virtually all raw rare earths from China, processes some into magnets domestically, but still relies on Chinese magnet imports for the majority of its needs. The Japan External Trade Organization reported that in 2024, Japan imported approximately 8,000 tons of rare earth magnets, with over 70% sourced from China. There is no substitute supplier at that scale. The U.S. has rare earth mines, but limited magnet manufacturing capacity. Australia mines rare earths, but ships most to China for processing. Japan has been trying to diversify, investing in rare earth projects in Vietnam, India, and Kazakhstan, but those efforts won't reach commercial scale for years. In the meantime, Japan's manufacturers are caught in a bind. Electric vehicle makers like Nissan and Toyota depend on rare earth magnets for traction motors. If magnet supplies tighten, EV production slows. Japan's robotics companies, Fanuc, Yaskawa, Kawasaki Heavy Industries, build industrial robots that use dozens of precision servo motors per unit, each requiring neodymium magnets. Semiconductor equipment makers like Tokyo Electron and Screen Holdings produce machines with ultra-precise actuators and motors, again, magnet-dependent. A sustained 27% reduction doesn't just delay one shipment. It forces production cuts, shipment delays, and lost contracts. And it gives competitors in South Korea, Germany, and the U.S. a window to capture market share while Japanese suppliers scramble. And now Layer 3, the dual-use goods trap, and why this is about much more than trade. Dual-use goods are products and technologies that serve both civilian and military purposes. Rare earth magnets are the textbook example. The exact same neodymium iron boron magnet that powers a Toyota Prius traction motor can also power the actuator in a precision-guided missile fin. The same magnet in a Fanuc industrial robot can be used in a military drone gimbal. There's no technical difference, just end use. And this is why China's export controls are so effective. Beijing doesn't have to prove military end use. It just has to cite the potential for dual use and delay the shipment. Japanese manufacturers, even those producing purely civilian goods, get caught in the same enforcement net as defense contractors. The Japanese government is acutely aware of this. Tokyo has been pushing for domestic rare earth magnet production and has allocated subsidies for companies willing to build processing facilities in Japan. But building a rare earth magnet supply chain from scratch takes years. You need mines, separation facilities, smelting plants, magnet production lines, and quality control systems. Even with government support, Japan is at least 5 years away from meaningful production independence. In the meantime, every factory, every automaker, every robotics company in Japan is vulnerable to exactly this kind of pressure. And Beijing knows it. This is the essence of resource leverage in the 21st century. Control the materials that power advanced technology, and you control the industries that depend on them. So what does this look like in practice? Let's walk through a real example. Take a mid-sized Japanese EV component supplier. Let's call them Company T. They manufacture traction motors for electric vehicles, supplying both domestic automakers and export clients in Europe and North America. Each motor contains about 2 kilograms of neodymium iron boron magnet material. Company T produces roughly 50,000 motors per year, which means they need about 100 tons of rare earth magnets annually. Before the export restrictions, Company T would order magnets from their primary Chinese supplier on a quarterly basis, with lead times of about 6 to 8 weeks. Shipments arrived on schedule. Production ran smoothly. But starting in January 2025, shipments began getting delayed. First by a week, then 2 weeks, then a month. By March, Company T's inventory buffer was gone. They had to cut motor production by 30% and notify their clients of delayed deliveries. One major European automaker, facing its own tight EV production deadlines, switched to a South Korean motor supplier who had secured magnet inventory earlier. Company T lost the contract, worth roughly $15 million annually. And they're not alone. Across Japan, dozens of manufacturers in the EV, robotics, and precision equipment sectors are facing the same crunch. Some are paying premiums of 20 to 30% to secure magnet supplies from non-Chinese sources, eating into margins. Others are redesigning products to use less magnet material or lower-grade alternatives, sacrificing performance. A few are pausing new production lines entirely until supply stabilizes. This is the real-world impact of a 27% export reduction. It's not abstract trade policy. It's lost contracts, delayed shipments, and eroded competitiveness in global markets. Let's bring it all together. 3 takeaways from this story. First, rare earth magnets are not a commodity. They're a strategic choke point. China's 27% export cut to Japan is a demonstration of resource leverage. These magnets power EVs, robotics, wind turbines, and defense systems. Whoever controls the supply controls the industries. Second, Japan has no quick fix. Diversifying supply chains takes years. Domestic production requires mines, processing plants, and magnet manufacturing facilities that don't exist yet. In the short term, Japanese manufacturers will face delays, higher costs, and lost contracts while competitors in other countries fill the gap. Third, this is bigger than Japan. Every advanced economy depends on rare earth magnets. If China can squeeze Japan's supply, it can do the same to Europe, the US, or any other nation that crosses its strategic red lines. The lesson is clear. Critical material supply chains are now a geopolitical battleground. So what should you watch next? 3 things. 1. Japan's response. Will Tokyo accelerate subsidies for domestic rare earth projects? Will it coordinate with the US, Australia, and India on alternative supply routes? 2. China's next moves. If this export cut achieves Beijing's strategic goals, expect similar pressure on other materials: gallium, germanium, tungsten. 3. Industry adaptation. Which companies will redesign products to reduce rare earth dependence? Which will absorb higher costs? And which will exit the market entirely? If this kind of breakdown helps you connect the dots between policy, supply chains, and real-world impact, subscribe so you never miss the next one. We analyze Japan's economy, business shifts, and strategic moves every single day, and we make it make sense. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.